And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com, brought to you in part by Yahoo DFS. More on that momentarily. Big offerings, as always, for NFL this upcoming Sunday. Dan Stratford, Dave Lockren, along with you on this Friday morning. I got my days totally confused yesterday, Dave. I was just all over the map with Adam and I. I didn't know which way I was going. Said it was Tuesday, then said it was Thursday. It was bad. But nonetheless.
We do it all the time.
Exactly. We are here. And I've also started doing 3 days in a row of the podcast, which has not been recent memory. So it's just been, anyway, there's a snow day in there. Excuses. I get it. Get your shit together, Dan. Anyway, Dave, how the hell are you doing?
Well, it's fun watching the Cowboys lose, but I got to tell you, I mean, watching them and the Eagles, it's a battle of futility.
Yep.
I mean, my God, like both of them have had every opportunity to run away with a terrible division, and neither of them can do it. It's pretty crazy.
It feels like a lose-lose Monday night for the Eagles. I mean, you're facing Eli Manning. If you win, you should have won.
They'll lose.
If you lose.
Yeah, don't even worry about the win part.
Philadelphia burns to the ground Monday night.
It's already burning, friend. It's already burning.
That's fair. You do have Eli Manning at 116 and 116 and one, I think. I think he has one tie in his career. So this will determine whether or not Eli is a winning or losing quarterback for his career. All things considered that Daniel Jones comes back for the final games of the season. But
interesting.
If ever there's a mediocre quarterback, there you go. Well, he's 500. Not that quarterback wins matter, but
they lost to Ryan Fitzpatrick, so not counting my eggs before they hatch, fella.
There you go. We have 10 games on this slate. I will break some news here at the top. The New York Knicks are a very bad basketball team. A very, very bad
almost
basketball
as bad
team.
As the Sixers.
So, shockingly, signing 15 power forwards did not work out for the Knicks roster construction. But we have 10 games on this slate. We're going to break it down point guard on through center. We will use DraftKings as our jumping off point. Take a look at some Yahoo stuff in a little while, probably after shooting guard. FanDuel specific or specific to Yahoo prices, we do have the NBA strategy show first thing in the morning on Friday morning, and then you get the deeper dive at 5 p.m. and live before lock at 7 p.m. Also, tons of content available on Awesemo.com. In front of the paywall, you get the likes of Emacs, Cash Game, Building Blocks, and he has a ton of Yahoo information in there. Then you get all the information behind the paywall. Early Bird, your promo code, 50% off. That'll get you into the projections, ownership projections. You can add on the optimizer if you so choose. So tons of opportunity there on Awesemo.com to get free and premium content, Awesemo Plus as it's called, as you go forward. So we have a 10-game slate. Our most expensive player is Giannis. Karl Anthony Towns is holding a Q tag. Currently, it is probable for the game against the Thunder. That's a right knee injury. Anthony Davis has a Q tag probable for this Friday's game due to the shoulder injury. I assume we'll just see a Q tag on AD the rest of the season because of the shoulder. I think it
seems like it, sure.
A running thing there. Kyrie Irving still not cleared for contact. Any other injuries that you're keeping an eye on or you think that could influence this slate in one way or another?
Wiggins, Justice Winslow, Isaiah Thomas, Washington playing their second of a back-to-back. Marcus Smart, Aldridge, Bogdanovich. I don't know if Bagley's coming back, but the Miami's a good defense, but Isaiah Thomas played 34 minutes. I'm sorry, Ish Smith played 34 minutes. So if Isaiah Thomas is out again, you're just going to get huge run for some of these guards, specifically Ish Smith. So a couple injuries that we have to pay very close attention to.
Ish Smith, 3,600. We'll get to point guard now. We'll jump off. LeBron is point guard eligible, but we'll save him for small forward. Did you see, I think I shared it in Slack chat, you saw the travel from LeBron, right? Or the palming, whatever you want to call it.
Outrageous.
It's up there. I think you remember the Westbrook when he was still with OKC 2 years ago when he got the inbound pass and just walked up the court 4 or 5 steps and started dribbling.
Oh, it was bad. I mean, this was really bad. Yeah.
And it was just one of those things of, yes, he did not gain necessarily an advantage, but rules are rules, people.
And the ref was staring at him.
Exactly. And the best is the I don't know who was guarding him, but the full on was like, what are you doing? Yeah. The arms up. And
Quinn Snyder, too, was pretty pissed because his team was worried too much about like what was going on throughout the game, whether it was the LeBron and socks or the travel. And I get I get where he's going with that, but yeah, it was pretty egregious.
All right, let's talk about point guard. LeBron will wait for small forward, and we dropped to 8,500. Not a typical slate here, Dave, where point guard is our most expensive position. Dame Lillard is 85. Devontae Graham is at 8,300 for Charlotte. He gets a matchup with Brooklyn. A nice spot there for him. Dinwiddie on the other side at 8,200. So typically we're talking about point guards over 10K. Here it feels like a spot that we're already able to save at. Obviously, MPE helps us out a little bit here on DraftKings, but how do you see the top end of this position? Does anyone stand out, or is this even a spot where you feel like you can save a little bit more if the likes of an Ish Smith are going to get 30-plus minutes?
I mean, dude, if Ish Smith gets that run, even if it's against Miami, you still got to play him. I had him projected for 33. I thought it was a little bit high, but glad I did. Ended up playing 34, so we're happy with that, right? But yeah, LeBron at 10-1, I don't have an issue with it, but we're going to get to some of the higher priced players, and that's when everything kind of starts coming into focus. You've got Giannis, you have Towns, LeBron, Davis, Drummond. Kyrie Irving is going to remain out, so he won't be here. Bradley Beal, another one that probably plays even on a back-to-back close to 40 damn minutes. But I think LeBron is perfectly fine here. This is a game that I would expect to see quite a bit of scoring, 221 total, but the Lakers are favored by only 3.5 points. And you really don't have that many at the top. Like Giannis Antetokounmpo, I'm not worried about the matchup there, right? Like whether it's Leonard trying to guard him or Paul, it'll be Leonard, but it's just really not something to be totally concerned about. Karl Anthony Towns will be going up against Steven Adams. He's done okay against him in some spots before and struggled in others. He's getting a ton of run in competitive games though, and he's probable, so he's got that Q tag, but he's expected to play. Devontae Graham's price is coming up. I still don't have an issue with him though, and I think as he remains at low ownership, like we saw that the other day, not that low, but for a smaller slate, he was lower than you would expect. 63 fantasy points. He has a lot of upside, man, and I don't expect to see games like that all that often. But he's just big time. 25+% usage, 35% assist rate. Those are great numbers, and when you're getting that frequently as your top guy on the team, I mean, he's clearly taken over as the number one scorer here, and you've got to love it. Malcolm Brogdon's price is way too cheap against Detroit too. You're getting 35 to 38 minutes a game from him, so he's in play. And then Spencer Dinwiddie against Charlotte. So all of these guys, and like a couple of the guys in the 7 to 8K range, are really appealing. Not huge on Kemba. I will throw out though Eric Bledsoe. This game should, when you look at games that should feature a lot of points. 232 over under here, two teams that play at an elevated pace. Milwaukee, one of the fastest paced teams in the league. Two quality defenses, but something's got to give here. There's certainly going to be scoring, and I expect that to be the case. So Eric Bledsoe at this price, if he gets around 30 minutes, you're definitely going to want to have some of him, I would think. Pat Bev's a good defender, but once again, they're going to score. They're going to run a lot in transition. We see Milwaukee do that all the time. So at the top, there's a lot to like there. When it comes to the value, a lot of this that's going to depend on the value is going to depend on what type of injuries we get, right? Like if Marcus Smart's out, that probably doesn't give you much, but there are a couple, and Isaiah Thomas is the big one here. What happens with Isaiah Thomas is big. Also, Bogdanovic is questionable to play, and he was like legitimately hurt last time, which is why we saw him sit. But not only that, Corey Joseph with that back soreness is also questionable, right, which means that you could see Yogi Ferrell end up playing 30-plus minutes in this one. And if that's the case, that's going to open up a lot too. So when you look at the Sacramento injuries and the Washington injuries, your two top value plays could come out of those games, assuming those guys sit.
All right, and that's a lot to digest for a 10-game slate. Lots of ways this could go depending on who's sitting and who's not. So obviously, if you are playing, you want to be near a computer between 6 and 7. Lots can break during that time frame. I know the NBA is pushing for lineups a little earlier, but still inactives can come in a little bit later. So if you're playing on Friday night, make sure, even if you put some placeholders in, that you're ready for some of this breaking news that could come down the wire as you are getting ready for lock at 7 p.m. Eastern time. as you scroll through shooting guard at the top end, again, we are at the cheaper price points. I don't know if this is DK suppressing prices. Adam and I talked about it a bit on the 4-game slate. We've seen that many times over. DraftKings specifically will push down some prices on shorter slates, open up ownership, or actually push ownership to some of the higher talented players. But here you have Bradley Beal at 8,600. You noted something in Slack chat over on Osmo.com about in single-digit games, Bradley Beal is playing how many minutes per game?
So in 9 games that are decided by fewer than 10 points, so competitive games, right? He's averaging 40.2 minutes per game.
That's crazy.
A lot. Yeah. Crazy.
And that's going to be something to track. Now, obviously, this Washington team has had monster struggles and has legitimate problems with injuries throughout. Are you seeing a line on this game yet or no for the Wizards and Heat?
Probably not because it's a back-to-back.
Yep.
No, I don't have one. But keep in mind, though, offensively, they are actually one of the best offensive rated teams in the league this season. Defensively, they've been terrible. The Sixers were just a putrid joke. Don't get me started. But the Wizards are dead last in defensive rating and 4th in offensive rating. So that says a lot. Essentially, not only that, they also play at the league's fastest pace. When you look at a team like that, top 4 in offensive rating, dead last in defensive rating, fastest pace in the league, that tells you one thing. They make for literally the best matchup in the league.
Yep, and there you have it. That will be a game to track and one that Beal at 8,600. Value is the wrong word, but is that the right price point for you for Bradley Beal on a 10-game slate?
Oh, dude, no. Even on a 10-game slate, I think he's too cheap. It's a difficult matchup. There's no denying that. But let me give you an example of something. Even in tonight's game or Thursday's game, if you're listening on Friday morning, Bradley Beal shot a terrible 7 for 24, but he played 38 minutes. He still had 26, 10, and 4. No steals or blocks. Fewer assists than he'd normally have. Ish Smith had a rare 8 assists. So, that's pretty much – I don't want to say a floor game for him, but if you're getting 38 to 40 minutes a game, that definitely feels like one of the worst type of games you're going to have. Now, I'm also not someone that harps on blowouts and I don't project for him, but second of a back-to-back, traveling from Washington to Miami, they're probably getting in real late tonight, right? Because they just played in D.C.
Yep.
Now going to Miami. There's a very good chance that this line is 13 points. So that's definitely worth keeping an eye on. But Bradley Beal at 8,600 to me is still a very, very good value, knowing that half this team is hurt. With Thomas Bryant off the floor, his usage goes to 34%, which is monstrous. If Isaiah Thomas is out, I don't think it makes a huge deal. Ish Smith isn't. It's. I won't say it's a lateral move, but it's not far off. So it's not huge. But what it does is it takes one more player out of the rotation, which means that you have to play somebody like Chioza, like they played today for 11 minutes. Justin Robinson still didn't get into the game. So they only played 9 players. And when you look at Beal and Ish Smith at the point and shooting guard, they played a combined 72 of the 96 minutes. So that tells you all you need to know, right?
Absolutely. Tons of minutes that will be played by Beal at a sub-standard price point would seem like some upside even in a bad matchup. Ownership will matter here, obviously. If Beal is very low owned, has some upside even against Miami. What about the rest of shooting guard? You do have Kawhi eligible here at 84, but maybe we'll save him for small forward as we did with LeBron. You do have Levine healed. McCollum is 7,400. DeMar DeRozan has been pretty damn depressing, and I know he ended up getting there against Houston because of the double overtime, but he seems widely disinterested in playing offense for the San Antonio Spurs at present. He is 7,400 against Sacramento. Anybody in this top tier outside of Bradley Beal that interests you?
No, you're right, though. It's very disappointing. I would have expected more. The Kings playing at a really slow pace this season, too. Second slowest pace in the league, basically tied for dead last in pace with the Denver Nuggets. Surprisingly, Spurs, top half of the league in pace. Ultimately, DeRozan at this price, if Aldridge is out, in my opinion, you still have to consider him. He'd still be a good play. But I actually prefer Buddy Hield if Bogdanovich is out. That would, to me, be an optimal play here. I've said a lot. Like, I think Bogdanovich is the best player on this team with De'Aaron Fox hurt, and definitely the best playmaker, the guy that can make things happen. But Buddy Hield has played. I mean, you look at his minutes, Dan, over his last 5, 36, 42, 37, 40, 39, 40. Sorry, that's
Right.
his last 6 games. So he's averaging like 40 minutes per game almost, 39. Crazy. So you're getting that type of run from him. You're going to see elevated usage if Bogdanovich is out, which I think could be the case. And I would expect a good game against the San Antonio. Look, if you're someone that's been watching basketball for a long time, keep this in mind. This is not the same Spurs team that we've become familiar or accustomed to seeing. They are a bottom 7 defensive team on the season.
Yeah, it's bad. It's real bad for the Spurs on the season. It's been real
bad,
abysmal, and you wonder how long that really wears on someone like Popovich and whether or not that has some changes coming down the way for the way they're playing. But pace-wise, they are still slow, right? They are.
Yeah. Well, who? The Spurs?
The Spurs are
13th. But the Kings play. Like, this is technically a pace-up spot for the Kings.
Okay. So reasonable there. And looking quickly, do we have a line on this one just to get a sense of – No, we
don't have a line yet because of Bogdanovich and Aldridge.
All right, so let's continue on at shooting guard. Hield is noted. Anybody mid-tier or cheap that you want to at least keep an eye on as this slate unfolds?
So just a couple of things to consider. If you see some injuries and Wiggins sits out, then I suppose you – I don't even know what you would do in that event. Like, no one probably stands out in a big way. Josh Okogie probably gets some additional minutes, but he's not exciting, you know. Farrell's available here. Also, one of the best plays I think on this slate is probably Jimmy Butler. He just continues to get massive run. He's playing fantastic basketball right now. When you talk about, like I said, this is literally the best matchup you could get for any team. Miami, especially, you know, it's a Heat team that, in terms of pace, you're getting a 6 possession per 48 boost here. They're very good defense, but they're going up against just a really bad team. The blowout is the only concern. Outside of that, you know, Jimmy's getting 35, 37 minutes for sure. He's going to drop. He's a well-rounded player. He's coming off a triple-double 2 games back. Look, he's not a monster usage guy, 24% or so, but he's your primary facilitator, and he's a good rebounder. And if Justice Winslow's out, that's only going to help him more.
That makes a ton of sense. Butler checks in 8,100, and you have to wonder, do the Washington Wizards hit the strip clubs when they land in Miami? Is that
I hope so.
Or the club, whatever the club, do they start drinking once they land and have to deal with the effects? Exactly right. That game may be over in the first quarter. Exactly.
I hope if they do, well, you know what? That'd be a wild night if they get there on the eve of a back-to-back and head straight to the titty bar. I mean, that would be a horrible decision.
Hey, you know, stranger things have happened, I'm sure, in the National Basketball Association, but we will keep an eye on that. Good narrative to track.
They're already going to get smoked, but that game might be over in the first quarter. Right. If they
vomiting on the court,
screw the tarmac, just land the plane right outside of land the plane right outside of Roscoe's.
I'll get off right here, guys. Thanks. I appreciate it. Over on Yahoo, $10 for the NBA 50K baller. They have $50,000 in prizes. They do have the 200K baller for the NFL on Sunday. That is 22,000 entries, $10, and I believe it's 150 max. Is that right? Yep, 150 max, 10.1% management fee. So again, as said, if you're trying to build a bankroll away from DK, away from FanDuel, Yahoo is the place to go. And understand the scoring system, understand roster construction, make sure you're playing the game the right way over there, not trying to just port over DK or FanDuel lineups, but go after it and go after it hard on Yahoo this Friday for NBA and Sunday for NFL. Tons of content available over at Osmo.com to support you in doing just that. Any other shooting guards before we hit small forward?
Yeah, just 2 things real quickly. The guards for Miami, Goran Dragic is out.
I was going to
So,
ask about Nunn. Yeah.
yeah, if Winslow's out, Kendrick Nunn, Tyler Hero have to get some consideration. But for me, I would really want Winslow to also be out. I think that plays a pretty big role in all of this for sure.
Makes sense. And I think Nunn's price point is still reasonable. What's he at? 4,900 on DK, 4,800. So has been playing decent minutes, had a pretty poor shooting outing against Boston. Not too surprising. They're a good defense and has had some bigger nights in the past. Nothing earth shattering, but could give you high 20s, low 30s DK points at a decent price point. Small forward is up next. You've already talked about Kawhi a bit on defense. You've talked about Jimmy Butler as a shooting guard at 81. We do have Giannis at the top at 11.3. LeBron is 10.1. Kawhi 8.4. Paul George is 7,800. And then you get Tatum, but he healed eligible here as well. And then we get into the likes of Fournier and Aaron Gordon, Taurean Prince, Jonathan Isaac's price point has come way down since Gordon has rejoined that lineup. What do you like at small forward at the top end? Is it a Giannis night against the Clippers? Is it a LeBron night against Portland?
Well, I'll say this much. Giannis shouldn't ever be 11-3, right? I mean, Detroit blowout win, 28 minutes. Knicks, unbelievably embarrassing blowout win, 22 minutes. Charlotte, even worse. Well, no, I guess they were actually the Knicks game was worse, but Charlotte, 20 minutes. He's played, if you look at these games, Dan, 137 to 96, 132 to 88, 127 to 103. Those are unbelievable, just spankings. And that's no reason to, if anything, he's nice and rested. And this game should stay close. It's a 3.5 point spread. But the big thing for me is I guess DraftKings like preemptively priced him down because of the matchup. He had Giannis at 12-4 just a week ago.
Yep.
Now he's at 11-3. I don't think in any matchup Giannis should ever be 11-3. So, yeah, I mean, I really like him at this price point a lot.
How about LeBron? A little bit cheaper. We've seen, obviously, AD continue to play through this shoulder. If AD were to be ruled out for whatever reason, then obviously LeBron's usage can go sky high. But is LeBron at 10-1 in play for you on Friday night?
I don't have an issue with him, but it's like I just would prioritize Giannis so much more.
That makes sense. What about the likes of Paul George and Kawhi for the Clippers against Milwaukee? Is this enough of a high-paced spot for the Clippers and these two defenders to sort of rack up the steals, the stocks, as you say, steals and blocks, not just you, but many say, steals and blocks, rebounds, along with some points to be had?
I think George is decent at that price, yeah. 7,800 is pretty affordable. They're coming off a couple big blowouts, too. So I'd expect him to get, like, if George plays his most minutes of the season here, I wouldn't be surprised. 37 minutes he played against Boston earlier. So that's not to say that I expect that. I would probably project him for 34 minutes here. But if you're projecting George for 34 minutes in this matchup, you're probably going to get a decent amount of it. Because on the season, you're getting 1.37 fantasy points per minute. At 34 minutes, that's not spectacular, but it's still good. I mean, that's 46 fantasy points just at his average. It's a good Milwaukee team, a very good defense. But again, you got to consider they play at a very fast pace. Like, points will be scored here, even if these are two solid defensive teams in the top 7 of the league. I have no doubt about that. So, no, I think you're right in saying Paul George could get it done. This is a game stack. Like, I don't ever intentionally game stack. If you feel where I'm going with this, like, I don't ever say like football where like if I play this quarterback with 2 pass catches, I got to play an opponent. No, it's not like that. It's more so like it's more so along the lines of if these guys all end up in my lineup, they end up in my lineup, right? Like that's what it comes down to. So
game stack by default.
Exactly. Like I think Kawhi's fine too, but I prefer Paul George here. He definitely will have the easier of the 2 matchups, and you could see some work funneled through him as well. We talked about DeRozan, Buddy Hield, Jimmy Butler, really good play here. Danilo Gallinari, we've gone over this.
Danilo.
He's in a pretty decent spot himself, but I just don't know what type of ceiling you get from this guy and how often you get it against Minnesota. At 6,400, I'm okay with it. Probably not looking at him as a top play, but I don't have a huge issue there either. Let me just see if there's any other value that is worth
Well,
considering.
Draymond's at 5,900, been playing in the mid-20s for minutes, get to match up with Chicago.
I
Carmelo's
can't do it.
What about, have you played Carmelo at all since he's been back?
I mean, they just amended his contract to make it guaranteed through the rest of this. He's played well. Like,
Yes,
he's actually helped this basketball team. You know, he's actually – but here's my thing with Dre. I'm projecting him for 24 or 25 minutes every night.
Right.
Steve Kerr said he won't play more than 27. And I'm putting him closer to 25. So I just don't see how you get there, man.
All right. We talked about some other names already, but anybody cheap here that you mentioned watching Miami? Duncan Robinson's a guy who, honestly, coming into the year, I had no understanding of who the hell he was, but has been playing decent minutes and has the upside. I guess if Winslow's out, like if you go down that chain of who's out and who potentially benefits from him at 4,600, is this at least a name to keep back pocket if you need a cheaper sub 5K guy?
You could definitely do worse. He's played pretty well. You know, on a per minute basis, he hasn't been there on the season, but lately he hasn't been bad at all. You know, you look at his past, what he's got, and I'm not trying to like scan the game log, but just asking yourself, can he get there? The only issue I have is he's been shooting really well, and I'm not so sure that continues. So, you know, 4 for 8, 5 for 7 from 3, 3 for 6, 6 for 9, 2 for 6. You're going to get some Duncan Robinson games where he does absolutely nothing despite playing a lot of minutes. That would be the concern. My issue is he's just too expensive. If he was close to minimum salary, I think we'd be all over it. But even if Winslow's out, he's too expensive for me to get to. I'd honestly rather just go to like a $3,500 J. Michael Green, assuming he's in the lineup.
All right. Anybody else small forward before we hit power forward? A lot of these guys are multi-position between these two, so we'll probably touch on one or two of them at power forward anyway.
It's pretty weak, but I would definitely stress again, if Bogdanović is out, Buddy Hield just makes for a really enticing play.
All right, let's hit power forward. We talked Giannis already. What's your thoughts on AD sub 10K against Portland?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting. Giannis is still the top guy here. I don't see how you get away from him, right? Like that's the biggest thing is that you want to get to Giannis. At least right now, the way I'm looking at it, I think you need to get to Giannis at that price point specifically. But Anthony Davis, I don't have an issue with. This is a Portland team that has really struggled to prevent scoring in the paint, and also second chance scoring and all of that good stuff that Anthony Davis is very good at. So those are a couple of things that I'm paying attention to when I look at this team. So opponent points in the paint, Portland's up there. They're doing a little bit better than before, but they're also allowing the most second chance points in the league. That's not good for them. And, Hassan Whiteside's good at getting blocked shots, but that's about it, right? He's really not a stout defender at all. I think this is a pretty good spot for Anthony Davis, and the price is totally reasonable. But I'm still prioritizing Giannis. If you're only getting to one of these guys and we don't have a ton of value, like the guys that are questionable all end up playing, I still don't think that, I'd be getting to a ton of him there. Kevin Love is cheap. How many minutes he's going to play is still uncertain. But if you get 30 minutes from him, I think that's perfectly fine. He's still well over a fantasy point per minute this season, and I'm okay with that. Who else do we have here?
What about
who else? Real quick. Somebody that you've heard me talk about a lot that I really like, but the foul trouble's been an issue. Wendell Carter Jr. Jim Boylan's giving him big minutes if he stays out of foul trouble. 34, 37, 33, 30, 34, 31. That's over his last 6 games. Pretty encouraging too. He's 1.02, I think, fantasy points per minute on the season, going up against this Golden State team that is just an absolute mess in all phases. Little bit pricey, so that's a bit concerning. But in tournaments, I don't have an issue with him because he can go out there and have some pretty big games.
What do you take of it looks like Bagley will be out. He's not expected to return on Friday against the Spurs. That's according to Jason Anderson of the Sacramento Bee. This is in the note on DraftKings, so I guess that comes from RotoWire or wherever that feeds in from. It would seem he's out. Rashawn Holmes has been pretty solid as a front court player for the Kings. Last time out, has really solid numbers, has been pretty consistent minutes-wise. 6,800 feels a little bit too pricey, but from a sort of cash game or solid return, good floor sort of player, is someone like Holmes on your radar, or do you see him a little too expensive there?
I actually don't think Holmes is a terrible option. He's played really well and he's getting the minutes. So the only thing here is that his price continues to rise. He's played well though. San Antonio, once again, man, not a very good team. Jakob Hurdles an okay defender, but he's not great. He's not good. And really, you and I discussed this so often, and I even had an acronym for it: MUMS, minutes, usage, matchup, skill, in that order of importance. You could mix up the first one. It could be, let's see, but like minutes are really the big thing. If I'm doing projections and I'm like looking at and setting rotations in minutes, tweaking minutes up 3 for a certain player could unquestionably make him one of the best options of the day. Whereas if you drop it 3 or 4 minutes, it ends up being like a decent play. You know what I mean?
Yep. And could be, again, sort of, for me, someone like Holmes on this is just a cash game. I want to know his floor. I want to know what he's going to give me as a potential floor game, so I can, bake in a certain amount in cash game head-to-heads and the like. Don't think Holmes is going to go out and throw up 60 fantasy points on this slate at $6,800. Anybody cheap here? Do you go back to Rui? Simply because Washington's front court looked so bad. Bertans, what was he, 6 for 6 to start the night?
To start, I mean, just crazy, dude. There was still like 5 minutes left in the second half, or in the first half, too.
Anybody from Washington of interest against Miami, or these guys just not talented enough to warrant playing them against a Heat team that's pretty good on the defensive end?
So I want to see what minutes look like. Number one is Jan Mahinmi going to is Jan Mahinmi going to play a second of a back-to-back? My assumption is he doesn't, right? So you take let me break this down. It's kind of important. 13 minutes he played out of it. And then Mo Wagner probably gets, I don't know, I'd probably give him another 5 there. Hachimura played 42. Bertans played 37 off the bench. Troy Brown played 18. Bonga played 19. But Brown was backing up at guard spots. And we only had 9 players. I don't think Mahinmi would play the second of a back-to-back. I really don't. So, Hachimura, and maybe Bertans plays 40, but I doubt it. Like, that probably seems like the most he's going to get on the second of a back-to-back. Rui played almost 43 minutes in regulation. That's crazy. I'll say this much though, with the lack of personnel that they have, and the fact that Admiral Schofield didn't even get off the bench, which should have been expected. I think you have to consider Rui here if he's going to get that crazy of run. He attempted 18 shots in this game, played 43 minutes.
Right.
And Bertans definitely slowed down in the second half, Dan, but he got up 16 shots. He attempted 13 threes. He's not going to shoot that well, but he's still a good 3-point shooter. And then Mo Wagner. Like, I think Wagner, I'm assuming Mahinmi doesn't play. I don't know if he's going to or not, but my guess is he doesn't. I'd give him another. You know what, dude? I don't know where those minutes go to. He might play like 36 minutes in this game. Maybe Schofield plays. You know what? Maybe Schofield plays like 7 or 8, but I still think Wagner plays 30 here.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Schofield played 8 in that first 7 minutes?
I think it was like 6. Maybe it was 8. Could have been.
Yeah, 12-3, 7 minutes, 0.75 fantasy points. That's impressive. But I also do commend him. He played in a G League game earlier in the day, got into Washington to play for the NBA squad and did get into the contest. So that's pretty impressive on the same day by him. Let's roll to center and close it out. As always, Towns, AD, Drummond, Jokic. We've talked about AD a bit, so let's talk Towns, Drummond, Jokic, Whiteside, Bam Adebayo, and Jarrett Allen are our top center-only options here. Allen at 7,200. You do have Towns all the way up at 10,400. What's your take on Towns? You're talking a bit about him against Adams before. 10-4 is a decent price point for what Towns can do upside-wise, but is this a matchup that concerns you?
Well, first, yeah, he's probable to play. The matchup isn't great. No, I mean, you know this. Steven Adams, despite this team not being very good, we don't really talk about OKC much from a fantasy standpoint because there's just not much there, right? But they're still very good. at limiting opposing centers. They're allowing a bottom 10 efficiency to the position this season. They are allowing, I think, top 5, top 6 in scoring and rebounding. They haven't been as good. I'd be curious to see Steven Adams' defensive rating. That's far from like the be all and end all, but where is he here in terms of one? Okay, so it's the same that it was. We could look at real plus minus and all that good stuff on some other shows, but ultimately I think Towns is perfectly fine, but I'd probably go. So let's do this. If we're ranking Giannis, Towns, LeBron, and Davis, guess you could throw Drummond in the mix too, right?
Yep.
I would go Giannis and then like 3 steps down, and then LeBron at the price. LeBron and Davis and LeBron aren't that far separated in salary, right? It's actually pretty close. I'd probably go Davis, LeBron, Towns, but Davis and LeBron are interchangeable, and then Drummond down there at the bottom, just because his price is getting a little bit too close to the rest. And I've always harped on the fact that Drummond's one ability of his that nobody talks about is he's really good at getting stocks, right? Everyone's just like, oh, he's just a rebounder, he get putbacks and that, but he doesn't really do much other than that. It's not true. I mean, last year he averaged 1.7 steals, 1.7 blocks. The year before that, 1.5, 1.6, 1.5, 1.1, 1.5, 1.4. Let's go back to 2015. This year, 1.7 steals, 2 blocks per game. When you take that and just say 2 and 2, like right. That's 8 fantasy points right there. It might not sound like a lot, but you need to squeeze everything out of that in order to pay off your salary. Drummond is actually okay here, but not a priority.
What about we didn't talk about Sabonis at power forward? If reading points in the paint again, opponents' points in the paint correctly, Detroit a bottom 6 team when it comes to opponent points in the paint, and I said that 3 times in less than a minute. But any interest in Sabonis at power forward or center before we move on to the cheaper end of the center position?
I don't have an issue with him. It's just a big front court, man. His bread and butter has been just scoring and rebounding, and once in a while a few assists. But I think the rebounding could be hard to come by just going up against a big front court. I know Blake hasn't been rebounding well, but he's still a big body there. This is still a big front court. I don't see myself getting to too much Sabonis. You know who I do find very interesting, though, is Bam Adebayo. But I read something on him saying that he was really sore after the game. I'm trying to find it. Let me pull this up because it's important. And I've said it's important a couple times, so we're on the same page. Saying important stuff, bro.
Clearly.
Okay, you ready for this? Roto World. Bam Adebayo said his right foot hurt after Wednesday's loss to Boston. To be clear, there's no cause for concern. The injury was used as an anecdote in the story about the Heat, not a real injury report, but it's still worth mentioning. He was spotted icing his foot after the game, and when asked what happened, he replied, "I have no idea, bro. It just hurts. We'll let you know if he surfaces on the injury report." First of all, what the hell does that mean? The title is Bam Adebayo said his right foot hurt after Wednesday's loss to Boston. And then they say, to be clear, there's no cause for concern. The injury was used as an anecdote in the story about the Heat.
I think we need to define what the word anecdote means.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. How is that an anecdote in the story about a Heat? Not a real injury report, but it's worth mentioning. Okay. And then he says it just hurts, and they saw him icing his foot.
Yep.
How is that not cause for concern? And how in the shit is that an anecdote?
It's not an anecdote.
Right? And they said in a story about the Heat. I don't know.
The Miami Heat or about the Heat, like the weather?
The Heat is H is capitalized.
Okay. All right.
So but point being, how do you not love Bam Adebayo in this spot?
Well, he has a foot injury. What?
Well, that's the thing. And then check this out, though. That's the thing. When you look at Bam Adebayo's production, does that coincide, or his lack of production, does that coincide with his foot injury? Seeing that his last 3 of his last 4 games have been ugly, or is that just an anecdote?
RotoWire in the past, was it RotoWire or RotoWorld? That was RotoWorld.
No, it was from The Athletic.
Okay, so RotoWorld in the past used to use the word cool in like 15 different ways in blurbs. So I know these blurbs can sometimes get a little dicey and sometimes can be a little tough to write. And even writing an article, you just use the wrong word. But that's not what anecdote means. But anyway.
I don't know. Unless it was and we're totally off. But
But I
it's
do
still,
hear you on Adebayo, and I do
yeah, it would still be tough not to get to him if he plays and we find out that there's nothing wrong. But I am at least keeping that in the back of my head, is what I'm saying.
Yep, that makes sense. Any cheap or mid-tier options that you think are worthwhile to mention before we close out this podcast?
Wagner's price has come up, but I definitely think you're going to get a lot of minutes here. If Mahinmi sits, Wagner just feels like somebody that even in a difficult matchup, assuming he stays out of foul trouble, which could be difficult, averaging 4 fouls per 19 minutes this year is insane. There's still upside there. This lineup's going to have to play a ton. It's very possible that even on a second of a back-to-back, Scott Brooks goes with an 8-man rotation. I think he'll probably put Schofield in there, but he'll get like 9 minutes. So I think that's a really good spot. So just looking over the rest of the position, you know who else I think it's just as a tournament as a dart throw that could make sense in the event that he gets hot? Meyers Bleonard. Like he probably only plays 20 minutes, but it's possible that he gets off to a hot start against a terrible Washington team, or he gets some blowout run, which you don't want to bet on that. But seriously, you could get 20 minutes and 30 fantasy points from him here. It sounds crazy. I know, like it really does. But he's the dead min. He's 3,100, so he's 100 off. It would be like a guy if you play 150 lineups, you have 5 or 10 of. But in this matchup, I don't think it's the craziest thing. And I don't think like 25 or I don't think 20 from him would even hurt you at that price point.
Any of the Orlando Magic front court guys, Birch or Bamba or the like, interest you at all against Cleveland here?
So Kem Birch is getting good run. He's fouled out in 2 of his last 4 games, but he's getting good minutes. He just hasn't been effective with it. Actually, he's been largely ineffective. But I will say this much: if Mahinmi sits and Wagner ends up ends up being projected for high ownership, Birch is basically the same price, and he wouldn't be the worst pivot in a much better matchup, assuming they probably get similar playing time.
Makes sense. Any punts? You already mentioned a couple at center.
Yeah, there's not a lot of value here right now. Just big thing in the mid range. Keep an eye on Adebayo because man, what a good spot that is. Oh, and Kelly Olynyk. Meyers Bleonard is the crazy off the reservation punt, but Kelly Olynyk, his minutes have been all over the place, which makes him a great tournament option. So if he gets 30 plus minutes in this spot, you have to feel good about that too. And I think he's reasonably priced. I have him as one of the better values on the slate. Nothing spectacular, but decent enough.
All right. We will keep an eye on all that. You can always find Dave over on awesemo.com. You get the NBA strategy show, but you also get the deeper dive, which is typically, well, as always, Adam and Dave at 5 p.m. Eastern time for most slates. If there's a scheduling difference, then sometimes it may move, but you do also get Live Before Lock, which is a rotating cast of characters. Emac Spags, Josh, you get Ed Fear on there as well, Chris Rendon from time to time on the NBA. Don't forget tons of NFL content as well available for you as we head into week number 14. I would be shocked. Well, I guess I wouldn't be shocked if Jason Garrett is still coaching the Cowboys next week because Jerry Jones is an idiot. But this is just amazing to see how bad this Cowboys team is performing against the Chicago Bears of all teams. But nonetheless, we have NFL content available. We have all the NFL strategy shows. You can check those out on YouTube. Lots of content behind the paywall as well. Projections and so much more available to you. So use that promo code EARLYBIRD if you so choose to become a member of awesemo.com. Would love to have you on board. And you find Dave on Sirius XM, Sirius 210, XM 87, 5 to 7 on Saturday, 7 to 9 on Sunday with one Manny Laura breaking down the DFS slate heading into Sunday. And then, of course, recapping the day that was on Sunday night and looking ahead to the showdown slate as they get started there. So with that said, you find Dave on Twitter at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D. Find myself at Dan Stravern, Osmo_com for the website. And you check back here for the DFS Early Bird with Emac and Adam tomorrow morning. Thanks so much for listening.